All right, today we're going to talk about the human mind, but maybe not in the way you're used to. We're not just looking at feelings and thoughts, we're looking at it like an operational system. We're going to explore this really powerful framework called the Archivists of Chaos. Think of it as an architecture for your own consciousness.
So let's start with this classic idea from Carl Jung. It basically says that all the stuff running in the background, the stuff we're not aware of, is actually in the driver's seat. You know that feeling when you keep getting into the same situations, hitting the same walls over and over? Well, Jung's point is that when that happens, we just throw our hands up and call it fate.
Okay, but what if we just flip that on its head? What if fate isn't some grand mystical plan? What if it's just a bug? A bug in your own personal operating system. It's what happens when you have automation without observability. And that's the big idea we're diving into today, treating the mind like an OS we can actually work with. So that brings us to our first section. Is fate a bug or is it a feature? We're going to take these old psychological ideas and translate them into modern tech speak. The goal here is to strip away some of the mystery and see the blueprint underneath. First, we got to get on the same page about Jung's concept of the shadow. In traditional psychology, this is all the stuff we kind of push down and hide. The parts of ourselves we don't like to admit are there. The impulses, the traits, the things that, often end up running the show from behind the curtain. And here is the modern translation. This is where it gets really powerful. From a systems point of view, the shadow is just unaudited legacy code running with elevated privileges. I mean, think about that for a second. It's old programming, maybe from your childhood, that was never reviewed or updated, but it has full admin access to your entire system. In any IT department, that would be a 5-alarm fire, a massive security threat. And that brings us right to the core thesis. Fate isn't destiny. Fate is latency. It's the time gap, the delay between something happening inside you and you becoming consciously aware of it. When that delay is long, the outcome feels like it came out of nowhere, like fate. But if you can shrink that delay, you create choice, you create agency. Okay, so if the psyche is a system, how in the world do you manage it? Well, in this next section, we're going to introduce a model that acts like a SIEM for your soul. Now, if you're in IT, you know a SIEM system is what you use to monitor all your security alerts in real time. We're just applying that same concept to you. The whole architecture really has two main components. On one side, you've got the data plane. That's your unconscious. Think of it as this high-speed, chaotic, nonstop river of raw emotions, instincts, and survival patterns. You absolutely don't want to stop it. It's what keeps you alive. And on the other side, you have the control plane. This is the archivist. Now, the archivist never touches the data itself. Its only job is to set the rules for how that data gets routed. It's pure orchestration. So how does this control plane actually work? It's really a simple 3-step process. First, ingestion. The archivist just takes in all the raw data, triggers, feelings, dreams, with no judgment at all. Step 2 is normalization. This is where it gives the pattern a name. See, I am angry is just noise, but this is a projection triggered by a perceived lack of autonomy. That's a structured log entry you can actually analyze. And finally, step 3, alerting. Once you've logged enough events, you start to see the patterns. You stop just reacting to fires and start getting an alert before the script even has a chance to run. You can see fate coming a mile away. And this brings us to the really practical part. How do you actually monitor this system in real time? Well, you use a dashboard. This is where the Archivist of Chaos really comes to life. Your cognitive dashboard tracks 4 key metrics. First up is decay. This is all about finding bit rot, old beliefs, old habits that are just taking up space and no longer serve you. Then there's evolution, which is about making sure your mental models are scaling up as your life gets more complicated. Third is cosmic flow, which basically tracks how well you're interacting with the outside world. And finally, you've got the cognitive mirror. This is super important. It's a check on the system itself, making sure your observer isn't developing its own biases and blind spots. Okay, this all sounds great in theory, but how does it actually work in the real world? Let's take this whole architecture and apply it to a situation we can all understand, a huge career change. We're going to treat it like a full-on system migration. So picture this. Here's our case study. Someone is leaving a super high-traffic, socially chaotic leadership job at a casino. Their last day is January 5th. And the very next day, they start a completely new job, a quiet, low-stimulus, super-focused IT graveyard shift. This is the perfect scheduled maintenance window to watch a system as it undergoes a massive change.
So what does the migration runbook look like? Well, first, using that DK metric, you deprovision the casino leader persona. You don't delete it, you just revoke its admin rights, making it a read-only archive you can learn from. Next, under evolution, you refactor your skills. You shift from managing social chaos to quietly managing technical systems. Then, under cosmic flow, you log the exhaustion from the new shift not as a personal failure, but as a predictable hardware error. This isn't weakness, it's a known bug in the human biological OS. And finally, the cognitive mirror does a health check. Is the archivist just logging the facts, or is it spinning up some kind of hero or victim story about this big change? The goal here is neutral observation, not building a personal myth.
So what's the ultimate point of all this? What's the end game? Well, it's not really about being happier or more enlightened. It's about something much more concrete, achieving sovereignty through observability. Let's break down what that actually means. This slide really lays out the whole paradigm shift. The old way of thinking about self-improvement is all moral. It's about good versus bad, it's loaded with shame and blame, and this constant pressure to fix yourself. The new paradigm is just incident response. There's no good or bad, there's only legacy code versus refactored code. There's no blame, just root cause analysis. You're not trying to fix yourself, you're just instrumenting the system so you can see what's going on. And that brings us right back to the single most important metric in this whole system. Say it with me, fate is latency. It's that tiny gap between an internal trigger firing and you consciously logging that event. High latency feels like destiny because by the time you notice, the script has already run. But when you get that latency down close to zero, you create a space. And inside that space, you find choice. That is agency. So the final operational axiom of this whole architecture is this. You are not trying to be better. You are trying to be observable. The goal isn't moral perfection. It's about uptime. It's about having a high availability consciousness. Because visibility always comes before control, and control always comes before you can optimize anything. So, I'll leave you with a final question. In a pretty chaotic universe, real sovereignty, real control, is just the ability to see your own system while it's running. So take a look at your own internal dashboard. What's the one process, the one piece of legacy code with admin rights that's still running completely unlogged?